Hello everyone, welcome to episode 26 of the Mental Health Minis. We've got a slightly different one today. Normally we interview someone about their experiences, as you will have seen from the previous 25 episodes if you've seen any of them. But my guest today is actually the CEO of an organisation called Headway, Headway Norfolk and Waveney specifically. Her name is Claire Boothby-Barnbrook, and she's come to kind of explain a little bit about what Headway are and about the services they offer in regards to mental health, but also the experiences some of the people that they've dealt with. So, Claire, welcome.
Thank you very much, David.
How are you doing? You all right?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah,
So, if you don't mind indulging me, could you just, as I said, explain what Headway do so for anyone listening, kind of understand your services a bit more?
absolutely. Yeah. So Headway Norfolk and Waveney has been around in the region for over 30 years, and we provide support to adults with an acquired brain injury, or ABI, as we call it. So essentially, this means that anybody who, at some point from the age of 18, has had a brain injury, that could be through the result of a tumor, an infection, a fall, an assault, or for most people, most commonly, it's a stroke. So we provide support to those people across our various different centres in Norfolk and Waveney. So we're based in Kings Lynn, Great Yarmouth, Norwich, and we also have centres in Durham and Long Stratton. We primarily provide day services. So for people who aren't able to perhaps stay at home independently on their own and need care support, or people who can't go back to work after their brain injury or back into education, they might need some kind of day-to-day support and somewhere to go and things to do. So they can come to our day services, they can meet other people like themselves, they can make friends, find a community, and we provide that support for them and also provide respite for their carers as a result. We also provide support groups for people who've experienced a brain injury or for their carers who want to come and meet other people like them and talk about and share their experiences. And we do outreach support as well. So for those people who don't want to come to a day service or it's not right for them, we can go and support them in their home or out and about in the community.
I mean, it sounds like a wonderful service, and I'm sure, as I know from many of the organisations I've dealt with, the people that use it, I'm sure find it invaluable. So thank you for everything you guys do. So on to like kind of the crux of why we do these calls. We always kind of split out, as people will have heard before, but if you haven't, we kind of look at three questions: is what are people's experiences, how do they cope day to day, and what advice do they have? Now I know obviously you're going to be talking about this from the point of Headway rather than yourself, so in terms of your experiences of what you've seen from other people and what their experiences are, how does having the brain injury and the work that Headway do, what are the experiences with mental health that you guys have and what they have?
Of course. So, as Headway Norfolk and Waveney, we're part of a national network of headways. And so we're exposed to lots of research about brain injury and the impact of brain injury on individuals and their families and their mental health. So, if I explain a little bit about a brain injury and what it can do, and then you can understand how that might lead to mental health
Yeah,
difficulties for some
absolutely.
people. So, a brain injury can affect anybody at any time. As I mentioned, there's all kinds of different causes of a brain injury, and often it comes as a complete surprise. So, it can be a real shock to the whole family. But the impact of a brain injury can be really wide-ranging. So that you've got the actual physical injury to the brain, which could cause disabilities like difficulties with sight, with hearing, with speech, or with mobility. You've got the cognitive impact, which means parts of your brain might not work as well as they did before. So you might not be able to think in the same way that you did before. It can cause personality changes depending on which part of the brain is injured, because obviously the brain is where our personality is housed. It can cause really severe fatigue and sleep issues. So people can be utterly exhausted, but then not be able to sleep. And it can cause communication issues. So you've not only got difficulties with speech, like the kind of typical thing we might hear about a stroke survivor with slurred speech and things like that, but also being able to think about what the words are that you want to say and understand and use the right words and understand and pick up on social cues, which are so important in communication. So that can obviously be really isolating if you're no longer able to communicate. So those are kind of the physical aspects of the injury. But then on top of that, you have the psychological aspects of the injury. So the shock and adjusting to the change of your life suddenly changing overnight from you may have had, aspirations to do something that you can no longer do. You might have the loss of identity. So you can't do your favorite hobby anymore, or you don't remember your friends, or you're not able to go out and physically do the things that you used to do before, can have a really big impact on your identity. And of course, for some people, it might result in things like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, as a result of remembering the trauma of their injury. So there are so many different ways in which people can be affected. And just like everybody's brain is completely different, everybody's experience of it is completely different too. But we know that there are some commonalities in experience, and those are some of the things that we know about that impact on mental health. One of the first things is the fact that a brain injury is invisible. So it's a hidden disability. Many people won't know that you have a brain injury unless you tell them. So it's often misunderstood and can be stigmatized. So people might just think you act a bit strangely or something like that. They don't understand why, or why you might be more difficult to communicate with or something like that. As a result of that, and some of the other things I mentioned, we find that two-thirds of friendships and over half of relationships break down, partly as the result of, the injury and the things that have happened and the stress of that. But partly it might be that the person has just changed. They're not the person that they were prior to their injury. And so those relationships change as well. So with those kinds of things in mind, it's not surprising to find that people with a brain injury are at higher risk of depression, anxiety, and also suicide. We've found from research that's been shared with us that up to 75% of people with an acquired brain injury experience some kind of mental health difficulty in their recovery period. And a recovery period for a person with a brain injury can be extremely long. It could be 20, 30 years. They may never recover. So it can be a lifelong issue. In stroke survivors, up to 50% of stroke survivors suffer from depression. People with an ABI also experience 20 to 40% of them experience an anxiety disorder. And the risk of suicide is 2 to 4 times higher in a person who's had a brain injury. And a lot of the research attributes that to factors like social isolation, chronic pain, and a lack of access to appropriate care.
Just shocking statistics.
It is, isn't it?
I mean, so before we get on to the next one,
Mhm.
so something you picked up on there in the fact it's hidden and it can affect so many different people. So I'm without telling the listeners who, because I don't want to, someone I know had had a stroke,
Yeah.
and once they recovered from the initial symptoms of the stroke and they seemed okay, they were just this lovely, sweet little old lady who would go into the kitchen, but the only thing that seemed to be was her speech wasn't slurred, but she would lose the odd word.
Yeah.
So she'd be saying a sentence, and this sounds funny, and obviously in the moment, even some people would laugh, and it's hard not to laugh sometimes
Yeah.
because she enjoyed the fact that this happened a little bit. But she would be saying essentially, "Oh, I was walking along the road and I saw a radiator," and it would be like I saw a cat or something, but the wrong word came out. Now, in the moment, that's very sweet and it's very lovely, but in the wrong moment, that must be so frustrating.
Exactly.
And it must be so horrible. And that's just one example of something you've mentioned, and all of the others. And I think it's obviously we want to look after these people, but for them it must be just awful to not be able to communicate necessarily or to understand what is going on sometimes.
I think that's the thing. I think going from somebody who's had lots of awareness and who's been able to communicate freely and easily and do what they like and has the freedom to kind of make decisions and choices for themselves and to be independent, to then having experiencing any of these symptoms and finding they're no longer independent, they can no longer communicate easily what they want to express. Some people really struggle with mood and emotional regulation because the part of the brain that does that for you has been damaged. So they can't actually control their emotions and how they come out. And then that in itself is frustrating because you're trying to express yourself, you're trying to get your point across, you're getting frustrated, you can't control that emotion. And then people go away with a completely different impression of you of what you than what you were trying to get across. So yeah, I think that frustration can be a huge cause of mental health difficulties for people, and not being able to explain that is incredibly difficult. And also for some people, they won't be aware of it. They'll
Yes,
think
yeah.
they're communicating completely normally, or they'll think they're acting the same way they always did, but it's only those around them who can really see the big change, which is equally frustrating because you're like, but I'm just me. I'm who I always was. And everyone else is like, no, you're not. So again, it's another reason why there might be a lot of frustration and difficulty and anger.
That kind of leads me on to the next question, actually, quite well, in the fact that so they're the experiences, but How do people deal with that on a day-to-day basis? Because I mean, I'm lucky enough I've never had to worry about that. I genuinely don't know how I would cope. I mean, how do these amazing people cope when it's going on, and how do you guys help with that?
Absolutely. So hopefully, most people, when they're coming out of hospital after their brain injury, will receive some rehabilitation support, but that's very hit and miss depending on where you live, what the waiting lists are like, what the resources and the capacity are like. That can be quite limited and in some cases not really happen at all. So, what we try to do is make contact with people who've had a brain injury as early as possible after that brain injury because a lot of the research shows that the sooner people get support, the better. But what tends to happen is people are discharged, they have a little bit of support from kind of rehab and health services. And then when that ends, there's nothing. And then we tend to meet people a couple of years down the line, or maybe 10 years down the line, where they've got to a point where they and their family have tried to manage things on their own for so long and things have fallen apart. So, what we want to do is try and support people before it gets to that, before there's the relationship breakdown, before people are getting to the point where they can't manage their job anymore or their parenting or whatever it is. So what we try and do is work particularly around the tackling the social isolation, which we know contributes towards mental health. And one of the ways that we do that is by having that safe community in our day centres. So they're around other people who've had the same experience as them. They can talk to and learn from other people's experiences. They can take part in activities that are designed for their level of ability, but give them some variety. All of our activities we try and design that have some kind of reablement, so it's similar to rehabilitation kind of element to them. So in the mornings, we tend to do cognitive activities. We call it cogwheels, and those will be kind of learning sessions with tests and challenges to help challenge and strengthen and exercise maybe the memory or the reasoning ability of the brain or the step-by-step processes, for example, for making a cup of tea. One of the things that people find is being able to put things in the right order can be difficult, or also remembering the steps that you have to do an activity.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of activities we might do with them in the morning. And then we might do some fun games or some art and craft or a physical activity or a sport that they want to take part in. So we're both helping them with that recovery process as well as providing them the safe space and opportunity to make friendships and to connect with other people. One of the other things that we do is with each of our clients, we set goals. So we talk to them about, what is it in your life that you would like to change or improve or work on, and how can we help you with that? And so they'll often set themselves a goal in terms of maybe it might be concentration time or, the length of an activity they can participate in compared to when they first started, when they suffered with lots of fatigue. By giving them goals or working with them to set their own goals, they have a bit more of a sense of purpose and something to work towards. And I think when you're struggling with your mental health, having a goal in mind, something that you're working on, can be really, really helpful. But also, what's really important is celebrating those small milestones and the achievements that you have. And then, obviously, once you've achieved something, you can reflect on it. You can go, well, actually, I can do that. I didn't think I could, but I could. Now, what can I do next? And it helps that kind of journey of like slowly going back to perhaps not who you were before, but getting to a point where you're happier with where you are now and accepting of where you are now. And then the other thing, like I said, is we work with a lot of people who perhaps don't need day service. They might be back at work. They might be largely coping okay, but they just need that little bit of support. And that's where we have our peer support groups, where once a month they can come together with other people who've experienced similar sorts of things to them. And particularly if you've just had your experience and you're still recovering and learning about it, and then somebody else in the group is maybe 2 years further down the line in their journey, you can learn from them and their experiences and what helped them or what they tried that didn't work. And that can be really beneficial as well. Just feeling like once a month you're with a group of people who understand you and what you're going through. So those are kind of three of the main ways that we work with our clients to help them.
I think it's fascinating listening to you from my point of view. Obviously, I haven't had anything to
Mm.
deal with your organization. It sounds like a wonderful organization, but I think you've said three things that I really wanted to sort of draw out here. Number one is the first one you said, which is social isolation.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, you guys work with people that have brain injuries, and that can be awful But equally, for those that haven't had a brain injury, social isolation, we know from evidence and anecdotes that it is one of the biggest problems is
It's a
people do
huge
feel
problem.
alone.
Yeah,
Whatever the scenario that they're struggling with is, they feel alone. So that is one of the things that we always say is talk to someone. Now, from
yeah.
our point of view of general mental health, and from your point of view with specificity, I can't speak today, to
Mhm.
brain injuries, it having that companionship with a friend or a loved one or a worker or some a colleague, someone
Yeah,
that you can talk to and resonate with, it makes all of the difference. So it's interesting that although you are focused on brain injuries, some of the advice that you have and some of the ways that you work is very similar to
it
just
is.
broadly how things work. You were then talking about daily goals.
Yep,
Now, one of the things that we say on the Canary Trust Mental Health sort of social media arm with myself, Nick, and Richard is having those small steps. Every single win is a win, regardless of how big it
yep,
is. And again, hearing you say that to have these little goals, having feeling like you've accomplished something, and obviously everyone's goals and targets are different.
yep,
Some want to go and buy a new car. Some want to make a cup of tea. Doesn't
yeah.
matter what your goal is. If it's a goal and you've achieved it, it's fascinating and amazing for you.
It's
And
something
then
to celebrate.
absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. And then what was the third? My apologies. What was the third thing you were speaking
Oh,
about?
peer support.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And again, this comes back to the social isolation from my point of view as well. Like having those people, and oh, that was it. I specifically wanted to call out what you said about having someone else that is further down the line,
Yeah,
seeing having almost turning the socialization and the target into one thing and having a someone that you can see as a target for yourself of where
yeah.
you can get to if you keep going
What you can
is
aspire to. Yeah.
absolutely amazing. And I think having you guys sort of rounding out those is just fabulous. I think it's wonderful. And it's amazing how even though you're focused on a very specific area, how broad the advice can be for it as well.
I mean, I think the thing is, when you get down to the basics, it's not rocket science, is it?
No, absolutely.
I always link to the like I always think the five ways to well-being really resonate with me because they're so simple and they're so easy to understand. And I think connection is fundamental. If you're not connected with other people, of course you're going to struggle. We are social beings.
Yes,
So I think whatever the difficulty is, whatever's led to your mental health struggle or your depression or the change that's happened in your life, connecting with other people is fundamental. And then, like you say, setting yourself goals, looking to the future, thinking about how you can build on and grow and move forward in your life. Everybody wants to do that, right? So we're just doing it
absolutely.
in a
Yeah.
supported way, targeted to help people with a brain injury what they need in order to adjust and move on.
And I get, yeah, at the end of the day, humans can be very simple creatures, and
Yes.
we're all very similar underneath.
Yeah.
I do want to draw it back to Headway, though, specifically, because obviously that's what you're here to talk about, from their experiences. And in terms of the advice that you give people, so I kind of want to split this into two parts. And number one is the advice you give to the people that already have your services
Yeah.
and sort of how you help them and things like that. And I want to focus more on that because that's why we're here. But I also kind of want to hear what your general advice for someone that may need Headway services might be as
Sure.
well. So, firstly, what sort of advice do you give to the people that have your services? Obviously, you've gone through how the daily goals and things like that. How do you sort of convey that to different people that have very different sort of reactions to you?
That's interesting. So all of our clients, when they come in, have an initial meeting with a key support worker who will talk them through all of our services and help work out like, what are they interested in, both in terms of kind of their hobbies and interests, and then also what do they need? Like where are their kind of areas that they want to develop and improve upon. So that initial conversation is really tailored to that individual based on what they're bringing to it and then what we know about them and their injury prior to coming to us. So I think the advice we would give at that point is around like being patient with yourself, like not expecting to be able to do things in exactly the same way that you did before, but setting yourself those little goals and recognizing and celebrating the milestones on the way to the goal, because some of the goals can be really big. for somebody, it might be walking again, right?
Yeah.
So you need to take those little steps, as you were saying. And I think that's the kind of advice we would give. But also, I think that the other things we would focus on is doing what you enjoy. What is something that you love? Do you like painting? Do you like listening to music? Do you enjoy, I don't know, watching a particular program on TV? Like finding those things that you really get enjoyment from and building those into your life as well. And so that's what we try and build into our sessions and our activities is asking the clients, what do you like to do? So, a lot of them are big fans of bocce. So we do bocce activities and bocce tournaments, that kind of thing, because it's something everyone can participate in. So yeah, I think that would be one of the pieces of advice that we'd give to our clients.
Wonderful. And in terms of sort of those that may require headway but haven't actually sort of discovered you, what sort of advice would you give to them? And then I'm going to ask you one more question after this, if you'll indulge me.
No, no, that's fine. So if you know somebody who's had a brain injury, or if you've had a brain injury and you're reaching out, you're interested in finding out about support, you can go to our website, which is www.headway-nw.org.uk. On there, you can also find our phone number, and that will tell you about the different services that we have. And what I would say is just give us a call because we can talk you through where you're at in your journey, what you might need, and understand what you might need. We can help signpost you to other organisations for other kinds of support you might need. So if it's help with benefits advice or something like that, we can help signpost you to citizens advice or somebody who might be able to help you go through that process. And then we can see if our services might be suitable for you and if we can help you.
And you've answered sort of my next question, which was going to be how can people get in contact with you if they need to? So
Yes.
thank you. So final thing is I'm going to put you on the spot slightly. What is it you would
Mhm.
like to see Headway do in the future? What do you think Headway can do and help with to achieve?
Oh, that's very interesting.
I
So I
knew
was
I'd put you on the spot with
literally,
this one.
no, no,
Sorry.
no. I was literally talking to some colleagues this morning about this. We'd really like to set up a brain injury specialist counselling service. We think that, I think counselling the research shows obviously it can be hugely valuable in terms of helping people with their mental health and just having that safe space to talk to somebody else without feeling judged, but that it's a private space and it's for you, and that's really beneficial. But to have a counsellor who understands brain injury to talk you through that, I think is incredibly important because the experience of brain injury, as I said, is so varied and so complicated for different people. And even as a family member, for someone to understand what you're going through with your loved one is really important. So that's something that we'd like to do because we know there's lots of waiting lists for kind of more generic mental health services. So if we could provide something specific for our clients, that would be amazing.
I think from my point of view, I think one of the wonderful things about your organization, from what I've learned today, and for a very different reason, I'm aware of this sort of thing, um, is we mustn't sort of beat the NHS with a stick because they're a wonderful organization, but ultimately they're stretched.
Yeah,
And we need these sort of, for want of a better word, private slash not-for-profit organizations to assist where the NHS simply doesn't have the resources to pick it up. And these people
exactly.
need help regardless of whether the NHS is available or not. So having an organization like yourself to deal with this, I think is absolutely wonderful, fantastic, and just so appreciated by anyone that's probably ever needed it or has thought about needing it. So
Thank
for
you
all of the work that Headway do, thank you so much on
very
behalf
much.
of probably everyone that's ever needed it. Um, Claire, thank you so much for joining us. As I say, I always try and keep these brief because they're about 15, 20, because otherwise I sort of lose what I ramble a lot as I'm starting to do now. But I was very keen from our chairman Robin when he spoke about you to kind of get you onto one of these and find out more about what you do, because it does link very, very closely to
Yeah,
mental health, which is a passion of mine to kind of, I wish we could eradicate it. It will never happen, but anything we can do to help people. So as everyone was listening, heard, if you do know anyone that may need these services, or if you're really unsure what the services offer and you want more information, Claire's mentioned the website already. When this goes out on social media, which is probably how you're hearing this, you will also have the link for you. Claire, have you got anything else you want to add? Anything else you'd like to say? The floor is yours. So
no, just thank you so much for this opportunity. although it's a brain injury is the most common kind of hidden disability in the UK, so many people don't know about it and only find out about it when it happens to them or somebody they know. So the opportunity to get this message out to people and let them know that there is help out there has been really valuable. So thank you.
Not to worry. And your details will be going on, as I say, on our social media as part of this going out. So
Yeah,
thank you so much and absolutely continue the great work that you sound like you're doing. It's brilliant.
thank
So,
you.
right. Everyone, until next time, speak to you soon.